if I was 10 years younger, I'd never be closing. I'd make it bigger yet. And one day I took Randy out and back, and I took a stick and I dragged it in the ground, and I said, this is where we're going to start our Wild West town.
Wonderful.
And it just grew from there.
Well, actually, all four of us actually ran the park. We all started it together, and we ran it together. I mean, we were here literally every day. I mean, there were no days off. I mean, that's why my brother's kids and my kids really didn't want anything to do with it, because this was the stepbrother they could never compete with. I mean, there was no family vacations, why we couldn't be at the ball games and stuff like that. This was it. I couldn't wait to get up in the morning to get here. It was that much fun. It was a lot of work, but it was fun.
In 1974, Donley's Wild West town in Union, Illinois opened its doors to the public, introducing visitors to a rich Western museum. Years later, the now 95-year-old owner, Larry Donley, decided to shift his focus from his beloved museum, seeking to create an interactive space where children could learn, explore, and immerse themselves in the history of the Wild West. The Wild West, or what was known as the American frontier, had its origins in the earliest 17th century and endured into the 19th century. These towns quickly sprung up, built by settlers searching for land, fortune, and notably gold. In 1848, the California gold rush lured over 300,000 people westward, sparking a mass migration. The towns they built were often hastily constructed with materials salvaged from other buildings or made cheaply to accommodate the new waves of settlers. Although Donley's Wild West town is not set in any specific location, its creation mirrors the rapid, resourceful construction minus the risks and challenges of the old frontier. For example, many of the rustic log cabins within the park were crafted from used telephone poles, purchased for under $10, a testament to their ingenuity of the Donleys. Larry's oldest son, Mike Donley, recalls the creation of the park, having managed the operations and advertising over the years. He remembers the early days of construction.
We had already built the main building here, the museum building, which we're sitting in now. And the carpenters were building the set out back, or what became the Wild West town out back. And you have to understand, too, that there was no really formal drawings on that. We had blueprints and permits for the buildings themselves, but the false fronts that are on there, Larry was coming up here on pieces of paper literally every day, just sketching and handing it to the carpenters, and they'd look at it and say, okay, and then, like he said, he'd come back and they'd built it, and he'd say, yeah, that looks good, or add more here, or whatever. You know, Randy and I were, again, in our early 20s. Randy was at just finishing up college at University of Wisconsin up in Whitewater, and I was working nights as a projectionist in theaters. And so we were coming up here during the day to help him out and build and get it set up. You know, it was just, I don't think we had any ideas of what was going to become. I mean, we were just literally flying by the seat of our pants with everything here. So there was no formal sit-down plan. You know, if somebody planned an amusement park today, you know, they go through years of planning and blueprints and focus groups and studies and this and that. We just opened up and let it run. And the beginning was very tough. It really was. I mean, Randy, what did we do our first year? It was only like 1,000 people or something, wasn't it? At $1 a piece. I mean, which was nothing. And so we just kept figuring it out and said, okay, we got to do this, we got to do that. And little by little, it worked. For 45 years, it worked.
Larry's story was not unique. Many children of his era dreamed of the Wild West, while some also imagined themselves as firefighters, doctors, or heroes of other kinds. For Larry, it was always about being a cowboy.
I was born in 1930. My childhood, cowboy and Indian. Back then, you could go to a movie theater and see 3 features, and in between the features were the comedy aspect of the theaters for kids. So at that time, it was 9 cents to get into the movie, but go in there and watch them twice and get home in time for dinner. After that, we'd get together and go out and play. If it was cowboys and Indians, that we'd play. If it was World War I, we'd go to the lumber yard and get some of their distressed wood and to try to make guns out of them, rubber band guns and things like that. And that's how we grew up. Indians, we'd go up and down the alleys and look till we could find some nice bushes in somebody's yard or something like that, and then go in there, and sometimes we would ask them if they were sitting in their yard if we could have a couple of the sticks out of the big bushes. And when they, I'd say, "What do you want them for? We're gonna make bow and arrows." He'd just come along and he'd pick them out. This is what you want. You gotta look and make sure they're straight. They helped us all along. It was great. The people were perfect. You couldn't want more out of them.
Larry's childhood also sparked another fascination. It wasn't just about creating new toys, but it was about collecting. One of his earliest memories, which might have been just a kind gesture by a stranger, became the spark for his future.
The garbage was picked up by a horse, and there was a fellow there that I was in the alley watching the horses there as they were loading the garbage, and he asked me if I could get him a drink of water. So I ran in the house, and my mother gave me a 1-quart jar. She threw some ice cubes in it and brought it out to him, and he says, "Oh boy," he says, I didn't expect this." And he reached in the back and had some toys that he had pulled out of the garbage that he was evidently selling to somebody. After that, every once in a while I'd see him, and he'd always have some odds and ends toys for me.
After graduating Morton High School and marrying his wife Helene, Larry ran a car repair shop while raising 2 sons, Mike and Randy. The boys grew up in the 1950s and 60s, immersed in the same wild Western culture that had captured their father's heart.
You got to understand, when I grew up in the 50s and 60s, the majority of the television shows on TV were Westerns. I mean, you had, of course, Bonanza and such, but you had Have Gun Will Travel, you had Gunsmoke. There were tons and tons. I think the majority of the shows were Westerns on TV in the 50s and 60s. So again, even as kids, we all played cowboys and Indians too. Everybody did. It wasn't unusual.
Soon all the Donleys began collecting. One of their favorite pastimes was scouring flea markets and shops, which weren't known as that at the time, and amassed everything from salvaged war items to lost music. Larry even put a sign up in his car shop, trading car repairs for items. Their favorite hunting ground was Maxwell Street, and soon their collection became a massive trove that some might call excessive, but for the Donleys represented opportunity.
When we started collecting things, even starting collecting things as a kid, my brother was collecting Civil War items. I was collecting guns as a kid, and my dad was collecting phonographs. He was focusing on phonographs and music boxes at the time. And, we all started collecting. We'd go down to Maxwell Street every morning, which was a very famous flea market before there were such a thing as flea markets. It was always on Sunday, downtown Chicago. Maxwell Street was right around Roosevelt Road, and Maxwell Street was the cross street. And people would literally show up 6 o'clock in the morning and just spread blankets on the sidewalks there and throw out whatever they had for sale. I mean, you could buy anything from, a used wrench to a machine gun if you wanted there. I mean, I'm serious. I mean, there was everything there. And so we'd go down there. Randy was collecting military souvenirs, so he'd look for helmets and daggers and such like that. Larry was looking for phonographs. I looked for whatever interested me. So, and that's how the collections grew. Actually, we at Larry's gas station, he put signs in the window too. Berwyn was mostly older Bohemians back in the 1960s, and they threw nothing away. So he started trading them car repairs for the junk in their attic. And Randy had a big sign in the window, wanted military souvenirs. Larry wanted old phonographs. And again, you had a generation of people there that were World War II vets and World War I vets too. And so they would bring the stuff in and trade it for car repairs. And the collection really got out of hand by the 1970s, and that's why the decision was made to come up here and build this building just to house the collection, because back in Berwyn, it was stored in semi-trailers in back of the gas station and garages rented all over the place, and he didn't even know what he had anymore. So
Larry's hobby of collecting grew into something much bigger. Mike reflects on the differences between his collecting and his father's collecting.
I think Randy and I early on understood the buying and selling aspect of it more than anything. I mean, Larry would take us to auctions when we were kids and allow us to buy. We could buy things for a dime, a quarter, 50 cents. I mean, you'd be surprised the amount of things you could buy back then for that money at an auction, really. And so Randy and I would buy the stuff, and some things we would save, a lot of stuff we would resell, which would help fund our collecting and such. So very early on, we understood the buying and selling of it. Larry was strictly collecting. He would never want to sell anything. So
as their collection continued to grow, the family was drawn to McHenry County, where they purchased land and began building their museum, a project that took 2 years to complete. While their initial focus was on phonographs, their vision swiftly expanded, turning towards the history of the Wild West.
We originally opened up a museum for phonographs, music boxes. And during that time, I was always a cowboy nut, little on. Had to make your own guns, It's just... And one day I took Randy out and back, and I took a stick and I dragged it in the ground, and I said, this is where we're going to start our Wild West town.
Wow.
And it just grew from there. I was so lucky enough at that time we were doing that I had a service station in Berwyn, and one of my customers was a contractor, carpenter contractor, and they were on strike, so they were looking for some work, and he brought 2 of his men out there with him, and they built what I want. Every time I would come down there, sometimes right after work when I closed the station, or sometimes just to get somebody to watch it and run down here and see how it's going on. And it was better than I expected. They put their heart into it.
The family operated largely on instinct, relying on vision and a lot of hard work. Larry and his son shared the duties of sourcing items from unexpected places, and some came from their visitors. The one problem was they had too many items. Larry heard that the Chicago Field Museum had display cabinets for sale, and these cabinets would house the Wild West town's most famous items.
I had visions. I could think on my way driving up here, I think, what are we going to do, where we're going to put this. We're not going to have enough things. It went on and on. We bought a lot, kept 90% of it. The minute we found ourselves having doubles and triplicates, Randy would actually start a little flea market out in back, and customers would come to that. They liked that. They would buy some stuff, but mostly they would turn around and have things for sale. And we found out that we were buying more and more. Some of the older folks that came in here, they say, we have some of that, I'll bring it out the next time I come. And it was crazy. All of a sudden we found out, common sense, we didn't have enough display bins here. I don't know how it happened, but I heard that, what was it, the Field Museum?
Field Museum in Chicago.
Field Museum were changing all these displays cabinets. And most of these display cabinets came out of there, and I found out later that there was somebody that talked them out of using these cabinets, and I found out they were for sale. And we got a hold of a guy that had a truck, and he brought those out with us, doing the muscle work on them, in and out, dragging them back and forth. I made a terrible, terrible mistake here, because these were all walnut cabinets, and I wanted them to look older and stuff, so I painted them all black. But you could scratch it a little bit and find out that these were just beautiful wooden cabinets. I brought all these cabinets for $300. I think we had still had another half a dozen that we scattered out in the back buildings when I built that later. I just get a feeling inside me every time I talk about it, it's the fun that we had doing it, always going to change something. How are we going to display them? Where are we going to get all the items? And it just came along.
These display cabinets house everything from Larry's personal collection of phonographs to historical artifacts, World War I memorabilia, death masks, Native American artifacts, and so much more. Donley's Wild West Town soon became a full-fledged theme park, attracting over 100 employees who worked the grounds from spring to late autumn. Originally intended as a museum, the park quickly expanded to include kids' attractions, a restaurant, a banquet hall, and even a gold mine.
When we opened this, it was strictly a museum. And what happened was the adults enjoyed looking at the displays, but the kids were bored out of their minds. I mean, they'd be laying in the phone. Larry'd be giving a phonograph demonstration, and the kid would be laid out in the middle of the floor. I want to go, I'm bored here. So Larry built the gold mine out back just to keep the kids busy while the adults enjoyed the museum. And that was the genesis for the whole Wild West town then. We started adding more and more attractions, and it transitioned from a museum to more of an amusement park. Over, 10, 15 years that happened, we started adding more rides and attractions, and that became our market then. As far as the advertising then and bringing people, we knew within an hour ride, that was the easy thing. But we brought people in from, would hear about it from all over the world. We did phonograph and music box shows. Randy and I put the largest phonograph and music box show on out here for over 40 years, and dealers would literally come from all over the world for that every year. It was quite an event, and we started that show. We did park districts and daycare centers. We did scout groups. We did senior groups, and then the families. So we knew what our markets were, and we would specifically go after those.
I think that the thing that really started us off is we used to advertise in the Chicago Tribune, and there was a woman, Anita Gold, that ran a kind of an antique section there. And she came out here and she says she fell in love with the place, all the little items we had. Just her and her husband were collectors too. So it ended up that she started putting little ads in her column in the Tribune. And people would call her and she'd refer them back to us. And she used to come out here and just sit and talk about their life. And she just always say, what you need here is a gold mine. You need a gold mine. You gotta build yourself a gold mine. So I took her word for it, and I went out there, and it's what we started. We put the troughs in there, or the running water, go down into a trough, and I found out where I could buy some gold pyrite. And the problem was at that time it was big pieces, so I used to sit here with a hammer and smash the living hell out of them, and then mix them up with the sand and stone in there and give them pans, and then they had to go pan out. And then every once in a while we'd turn around and have a contest. Who could get the most gold in 2 minutes or 3 minutes or something like that. It was a pretty much get ready to go and then shout. And then one day I told the people, I'm going to shoot my gun off, so don't get nervous. And that's going to be the start. And I says, when the time's up, I'm going to shoot it again. And I did. We had, of course, blanks in the guns and stuff like that.
The gold mine's name was Sweet Phyllis. And it was named after a woman whose husband used to donate his time here, and he went by Digger Daggert was his name. Remember Digger? He was a roper. He would help teach the kids how to rope out there. Well, Phyllis would hang around here all day waiting for him, and so Larry was building the gold mine down there at one point, and she went down there, helped him, lifting up the rafters for him and stuff, and helping him, so he named the gold mine after her. And yeah, that gold mine, we had to enlarge it 3 times make it bigger, and it was so popular with the kids. And as Larry said, he used to break up the pyrite by hand, and then we found out about the big gem and mineral show out in Tucson that they would have every year. So we went out there, it's always held in February. We went out there, and we were able to find enough people, because it isn't commercially mined. We were able to find enough people that could supply us with 100 pounds or 500 pounds or as much as a ton. Once we found a couple of suppliers out of Mexico that could supply us all we needed, and we would, you'd buy, 2 or 3 tons a year. That's how much we would go through. And it has to be processed. Once we get it up here, then it would have to be bleached. It would be shipped up here by truck in big barrels. In fact, we still have a few barrels of it left over in the warehouse. And we were told we were the largest supplier, or largest user of iron pyrite in the United States. Because now, I think the only thing else is used for sandpaper or something like that. But no. But yeah, the gold bags is funny. How many kids have their gold bags and still to this day will tell us, they still have that as one of their souvenirs. I mean, I have things growing up as a kid that I have a souvenir, so I can understand that. It's something that brings back a lot of childhood memories to them and something you would hang on to.
And then that part grew from there. We had started our gunfights and things like that. We're putting an ad in the paper, and you'd be surprised how many, not teenagers, but people in their 20s and 30s would come out and want to work here and help us out for nothing. And of course, that didn't last long, because our insurance company told me, you can't do that. If something would happen, you're not covered with anything. You could lose everything. So we started paying them. But we had guys, Mike and Randy can tell you, gun spinning, how they took, it wasn't state, was it world spinning?
World champion. Mm-hmm.
World championship. It was here, a lot of them never spun a gun in their life. They would teach the kids, and of course the parents loved that. And when I seen that, I turned around and put a couple, 3 or 4 little places to throw horses, horseshoes, lassos, tomahawks, things like that. And that's how it started really building up to success.
The Wild West shows became one of the park's key attractions, staged 3 times a day. These shows just didn't entertain, they taught the importance of gun safety and helped nurture some of the best in the field, who didn't even know it yet.
Growing up as little boys, we knew the dangers of that. I mean, and it was our duty to tell these kids and the parents, these are not toys. I mean, we all had toy guns growing up and such, but I mean, when you read about the amount of kids that were picked up a gun and it went off accidentally or whatever and ended up hurting them or killing them and such, it was our responsibility to make sure these kids understood,
and their parents
too, how dangerous firearms are. And they, even though we were using them in the show, that we would take that blanket, and you probably remember, and we would fire it at a tin can, which would literally obliterate the tin can. And once kids saw that, it made a big impression on them. It really did. So, well, every year it took 100 employees to run the park, and so in the spring we would always have auditions out here, and we would advertise through a lot of the Chicago publications for theater people, and we would hold auditions. So a lot of the park, as you understand, the people out there had to take on the persona of who they were. If they were the sheriff, they had to act and take on the role of the sheriff. People in the Wild West show, they were actors. They had to learn scripts and such, which we developed. But during the interview process for the auditions, we would always look for people who were into theater, who wanted to be actors, had musical skills, or any special skills. We would basically hand them questionnaires. What do you do? Tell us. I hired kids that were into magic, and they would put on magic shows out in the saloon. People that sang, would teach them cowboy, give them sheet music here, learn these cowboy songs, and they could sing in the saloon and such. Well, the gun spinners actually came about a guy by the name of Joey Dillon. And if you look up his website, it's joeydillon.com. He came out here. He was working at, I think it was the Midland Hotel as a doorman in Chicago. And he was only, I think, 18 years old at the time. And he came out here and he said, I spin guns. I said, yeah, okay, let me see. And he was unbelievable. I mean, he was really, really good. And he had been since a little boy, started with toy guns. And when he bought adult guns, then he said he would stand on his bed because he would drop them a lot and he wanted them to fall on the mattress. And so I said, all right. I said, you're hired. And I said, here, I got a copy of Marty Robbins' Big Iron on His Hip. And I said, take this home. I said, work out a routine. And he came back a week later and he had an unbelievable routine and we featured him in our Wild West show. And that fall he went up to, I think it was in South Dakota. Mark Allen would have a big Wild West show up there every year. And one of the things was the gun spinners, and the world champion gun spinners up there. And here this 18-year-old kid walk on who'd never performed other than here before, takes world champion, first time out. And I think the world champion at the time was a guy by the name of Bob Ham, who had been champion for like 20 years and just blew everybody away. So that made a lot of news, and I had him under contract for just one more year here because Hollywood was knocking on his door already. And so he fulfilled his contract here and stayed one more year. And we were promoting him as a world champion gun spinner. And then he ended up going on to Hollywood, where to this day he trains all the people for the big movies in handling guns. And he's always appears a lot of times as an extra and such, but his forte is training people how to use firearms properly. And that's what his website's all about too. Beyond that, then there was another who, at that same time period, a lot of the guys were learning from Joey, and we were providing them with videotapes. It was actually videotapes and CDs on how to learn how to gun spin. So we were giving it to these guys, how to rope, things like that. So we had two more gun spinners out of here. One was named of John Alvarez, and I can't remember the name of the third guy who went on. But a lot of people, this was their first rung on their step towards their careers, on first rung on the ladder. I mean, even my brother's daughter, who was in here during the summer working in our Wild West show, got discovered here by the Chicago Stuntmen's Union. And she, to this day, she performs. She's a stunt person. She's in New York right now doing filming. She performs on Chicago PD, Chicago Fire. I think she's on Chicago Law, too. Any movies that are filmed in Chicago and in New York. The Batman movies, things like that. She got her start here. Did a lot of the people that actually formed the Stuntmen's Union in Chicago got their start out here. So,
while exploring the grounds, Mike shared the details about one of their unique Halloween shows that was only shown a few times.
We would do a Wild West show, a Halloween Wild West show, where the devil came back. No. He had killed two sheriffs, and he was coming back to the next sheriff, and the town gets destroyed and everything. But anyway, the devil's got the new sheriff on his hands and knees, and he's begging him, please don't shoot me. And we had guys that were actually, we had dug pits here, and there was two pits that were covered with the stuff, the wood chips and stuff we used, and there was piped in a fog machine, and the graves would start to smoke, and the two sheriffs, the deceased, the sheriff that he had killed got up out of the graves and came and killed the devil. Yeah. And then went back to their graves and stuff like that. And the marshal had passed out. He was praying, and then he just passed out, and then these guys got up and killed him. And he wakes up, he says, what happened? You know.
The theme park offered a variety of attractions for kids, including pony rides, hand cars, bow and arrow ranges, axe throwing, lassoing, theme park rides, a roller coaster, a train, Native American villages, antique shops, and Western-themed stores, all brought to light by actors fully immersed in character. Behind the scenes, one of the key leaders was Mike and Randy's mother, Helene, who quietly managed everything the public didn't see, ensuring the smooth operation of the entire experience.
It was a whole family operation here, actually. My mother worked in the gift shop. I mean, there's the saint of the whole operation, is Helene, our mother. She, after we interviewed the help, she had to hire the help. She did all the payroll. She ran the gift shop. She would have to order the gifts, go to gift shows all winter long and get the gifts ordered. When the gifts come in, she'd have to inventory, get them priced, get them out, make sure all the gift shops were stocked. do the work schedules, check out the registers every day, do all the banking, everything. She deserves all the credit. She was the heart of the operation. So it was all four of us actually ran the park. We all started it together, and we ran it together. I mean, we were here literally every day. I mean, there were no days off. I mean, that's why my brother's kids and my kids really didn't want anything to do with it, because this was the stepbrother they could never compete with. I mean, there was no family vacations, why we couldn't be at the ball games and stuff like that. This was it. I couldn't wait to get up in the morning to get here. It was that much fun. It was a lot of work, but it was fun.
Mike then explained one of the more popular kids' rides that now lives across the country, Hodges Handcars.
They were popular in amusement parks in the 40s and 50s. And then they kind of disappeared. And we found a set just 3 miles from here. Some guy had them in his backyard. And we had those here for probably 30 years. And that was probably one of the most enjoyable things that the kids loved, those handcars. We sold those off last year. They went to Knobel's amusement park out in, I think they're in Pennsylvania. And they have them out there now. So they're continued on. They're still being used. Ours were crank, actually, hand crank. They did make a set called Huff and Puff, and I think they had those at Kittyland up on North Avenue, and they were very difficult for the kids. They didn't go as fast. Every pump, they would just go about 3 or 4 feet, whereas these, you could really get spinning. You went around a curve too fast, you'd fly off.
If you ever visited Donley's Wild West Town, you're likely familiar with their famous fudge. The fudge shop wasn't confined to the park itself. People came from all over, including Chicago, just to get a taste. It was all managed by a retired school teacher named Lois, whose fudge became a beloved treat for visitors from far and wide.
Lois, she was a retired school teacher from South Dakota, actually, where she originally started teaching on an Indian school. She worked for us out there. I bet she was there 25 or 30 years. I think she was 90 when she retired, wasn't she, Lois?
Yeah,
she's still alive. Yeah, she's like 100 now. She made the fudge every day out there. Yeah, we made our own fudge. She'd always give away free samples to the kids, and a lot of people remember Lois. Well, the thing is, especially with things like fudge, you can cut corners, to make a little more money on it, but Lois never would. It had to be right. It had to be, using the best ingredients. She always used the best butter she could get for it and everything, and so it's what made it good. We used to have people that would drive up here. This is the truth. They would drive up here from Chicago once a week, once every couple of weeks during the summer, to buy a pound or 2 pounds of fudge because it was that good.
Even as a young boy, I visited the park at least 20 times. Each visit offered a fresh adventure into the Wild West. One of the highlights was their antique photo room, where you could dress up as a settler from the era. My mother Margaret showed Larry and Mike one of my photos from those visits.
I'll be darned.
And that's him. So that's
I'll
my
be
favorite,
darned.
my favorite cowboy, huh?
Yeah,
And that was 2008.
I like the look he has on his face. They took good pictures.
Yeah. Now, again, when you ask me about what is enjoyable for us, I mean, that brings a smile to my face because of the fact that we created a memory for you, which here, 30 years later, or whatever, or 25 years later, you're still enjoying.
The park was also known for their simple but memorable cowboy hats that came in both pink and black, which was Helene's idea.
Yep, there they are. Look at that. Wow. Mom saved everything. Yeah, look at that.
My husband had those for us. I said, oh, you got the hats.
Donley's Wild West. Yeah, again, these are things my mother would go to the shows. She probably contacted, I think it was Jacobson Hat Company that used to make these for her. And we used to buy these. We'd have to order like 10,000 at a time of these. Oh, yeah, because you had to get your name embroidered in them.
Yeah.
You had to order a certain quantity to make it cost effective to have your name embroidered in them. But yeah, I mean, isn't that great?
The real Wild West faded by the 20th century as settlers claimed more and more land. For the Donleys, the Wild West town did not come to an end by land expansion, but due to the COVID-19 pandemic.
The last season we were open, actually, when COVID hit, it was in the fall. And we were already preparing for the next season, which I believe was the 2020 season. Yeah, that would have been the 2020 season. And that fall, COVID hit. and as a matter of fact, we had transitioned. We were in a transition period. We were still doing tours, but we were becoming a very good educational place too. We were doing a lot of school groups and scout groups. We had scout overnights. We would do a night at the museum program here, where the scouts would come in and a troop would come in. They'd spend the night here. It was educational. They'd learn about the Wild West. We even had a scout display here. They would work on a merit badge. We had a scavenger hunt for them, and they'd spend the night here, overnight here. And so that fall, when COVID hit, we were booked solid for the scout groups every Friday and Saturday night. And we were in the process of just getting ready to mail out our spring school group promotion, where we were doing history classes from the mid to late 1800s up to the early 1900s, focusing on invention and technology and the Western expansion and such. So our school groups were booked solid every year, and we were expanding the program, so we were going to be doing a spring and a fall one that year. So it was a matter of we were forced to shut down. The governor said, nope, all these places are going to close up, and all that business for that fall and that winter just vanished. Well, luckily, my brother, a couple years before that, had transitioned already into the auctions next door. We'd closed the restaurant and the banquet hall operation part of it to focus strictly on the auctions. So the auctions had taken off like crazy. I mean, we could not have possibly even imagined how successful that was going to be. So the park was closed mandatory for 3 years, for 3 seasons here. And when it came time to reopen, we just said, you know what? We're so buried with what was going on with the auctions that it wasn't a matter of coming back and even thinking of reopening this, because this is a full-time focus for somebody if they're operating the park. The auctions are a full-time focus too. So we had to decide between the two. And it was like kind of, well, we've been doing this for 45 years and this is, taking off well, so we decided to stay with that. But for anybody that wanted to come and operate this, there's a great business here yet. I mean, there's a demand for it. Every spring we're getting the calls for, oh, are you going to do the school groups again? Oh, the scouts want to come out here. Oh, the senior groups want to come out here, because everybody heard about the park and they've remembered it. So they're coming back to see if it's still going to open again.
Despite the park's closure, the Donleys remain hopeful, knowing that the Wild West town could one day rise again.
Again, people asking about whether the Wild West town would ever reopen. It could. I mean, if there was somebody out there that had the desire to do it, I mean, it is all still here. I mean, my brother and I we're reaching the decision within the next year. We're going to have to do something with it, because obviously there's a big expense for this just to lay here empty. But if somebody was interested in opening up the Wild West town, we'd entertain either selling it or leasing it to them. And it's a viable business, believe me. I mean, I could sit down with somebody and make them understand that this has still got a lot of life in it.
Finally, Larry and Mike shared some of their most cherished memories.
I used to like the kids having a good time. Regardless of who I had or what kind of a person I had doing any of the roping or tomahawk throwings or anything like that, I could stand back there for a little bit and watch them. And when it comes to the kids, they just didn't know what to do. So 99 times out of 100, the kid went away not knowing anything. I'm talking about kids as young as 5 years old. I had small hatchets for them, and I had rubber heads on a lot of them for the little kids. But I used to take the time and go down there and get on my knees and talk to them and everything, and show them how to handle it and bring them up and everything. And when I found out that they listened to you, and the first 2 or 3 throws are not too good, but after a dozen of them, they were pretty good. I got some small ones with the metal head on them. And I used to give them those. And 99 times out of 100, in my estimation, from what I can remember, they left their sticking that thing in the wood. Not necessarily in the target, you know, but it was enjoyable to see them do that. And it's the same thing with the rope, and the bigger kids would think, but I would go over there and I would take the rope and put it in their hands and get them close and everything like that. And I used to have the parents tell me, how do you spend so much time with the kids, you know? And I had one of them, a couple of them getting in a little argument like that between themselves, saying my kid never had such a time. We come back here at least once a month, as long as the Wild West Town is open. And I think that's what I got, you know. When I put the train in, there's a certain amount of kids, a certain age limit. I mean, I'm gonna say probably maybe from 3 to 12. Walk around the engine and I'd talk to them about the engine, and they would like to sit in there and have their picture taken. And the parents would always thank me for it and everything. But there was just a certain amount, it wasn't a big amount, but certain amount of the boys would, could I sit up front with you? And I always obliged them. And it's a funny thing because the next time around, none of the other kids came up and wanted to ride up front, but it was that certain amount that did. And I always took a lot of time with them, let them bang the horn around a little bit and everything. And the parents used to come and thank me, which I appreciated. You know, I felt like I'm doing a little something for them. And I got so that there was a certain amount that would come back every other week. And you'd always have a little something to give me, you know, a little bag of cookies or a package of gum or little things like that, you know, just for letting them ride on the train and stuff like that. Memories that'll never leave me.
We had a million years worth of dreams here yet we wanted to accomplish but never got to. How lucky was I to be able to do this? First of all, yeah, the kids, seeing, you know, the kids enjoy themselves, the memories of that. I mean, that was just, you know, always seeing kids laughing and having a good time. I mean, that was just like, yeah, you know, did what we wanted to do here. But the employees, you know, to a lot of the employees here, this was their first job. So you got to kind of nurture them, and you had to look and see what their personalities were and stuff, and see them, you know, they worked for you for 2 or 3 seasons, sometimes 4 seasons, and you just watch them grow intellectually and open up sometimes. And that was a very enjoyable part, and seeing, you know, helping them, you know, talking with them about their careers, where they wanted to go and what they wanted to do in their life. And again, just being able to run an amusement park. I mean, who gets to do that? I mean, every year I got to go to the big amusement park show in Orlando, Florida, and see what was new and stuff out there. And we were not constrained by anything that we wanted to do here. If we wanted to try something, we would do it, and if it didn't work, well, okay, we tried that. Now we know it doesn't work, and you know, I could have never, you know, we didn't come from a background where, you know, growing up, you were in business and such like that. Again, Larry had a gas station, which I worked at, you know, when I was in high school and such. So we were learning all this as we went along. I mean, when we started this, we couldn't have foreseen what this was going to become. I mean, because we ended up adding, you know, a big, huge restaurant and a banquet hall where people got married every Saturday. We had picnic groves here. We do company picnics up to 2,000 people. I mean, the logistics of that are just, you know, unbelievable. But you learned as you went along. So it was quite a ride. Wouldn't have missed it for the world.
Although Donley's Wild West Town may have closed its doors for now, its legacy endures in the memories, experiences, and dreams of everyone who walked its streets. While the Wild West Town may have come to an end, for the Donleys and their auction house, the adventure is far from over. This voiceover was recorded by Claude Martinez on February 8th, 2025.